warm welcome to all of you who are listening to this seminar from all of the places that you are. This session is part of the Family Empowerment Series. I'm Dr. SELIN. Today, I am bringing a message on one of the most discussed topics of our age, how to face our anxiety. When my daughters were little, the monkey bars were always the place on the playground that they found most thrilling while most terrifying. In the earlier days of their visit to the playground, it was an interesting process to teach them how to release one hand from the first bar and move it forward to the next. Many times they hung on that first bar, terrified and unable to move to the next. They couldn't make their muscles move. My husband and I encouraged them to will their hand to move, but sometimes it seemed like they thought of all the bad things that could happen the minute they let them go and move to the next. Whenever they looked down, they were afraid. That fear kind of blocked their ability to think clearly and immobilize their muscles to thrust their hand forward to grab the next bar right in front of them. Gradually, with some training, along with some encouragement and cheer, they gained the confidence to let the hand go and move to the next and to the next and to the next. In a few days, they became so proficient at it that we could sit back and watch them playing on those bars like little monkeys. I'm sure you would agree that we all experience such fear. Fear sometimes seems immobilizing, isn't it? We want to overcome fear, but we find ourselves hanging on that first bar, stuck from moving forward. But with a little bit of encouragement, we beat that fear and move to the next. Fear is an emotion that God created for us with a positive intention, and that is to keep us safe. It is hardwired into every living creature, including human beings. Fear for my daughters on the monkey bars was an instinct to protect them from falling and getting hurt. Fear plays a vital role in human life. It is an instinct warning us of an impending danger. How often have you encountered a rattlesnake on the meadow and took 3 steps backwards? How many times have we hit the brakes of our car to prevent an accident? It was fear that initiated or forced our bodies to act immediately. That kind of fear is God's gift for the survival of the species. Mild fear or anxiety also propel us to do things, like before exams, it will help us to study more and do well on a test. But there is another kind of fear that hits us like an assault or an invasion. This is called excessive fear or worry, or in other words, anxiety disorder. We experience this when our fear is based on anticipation. Here are some examples. We think about possibly encountering a snake on the meadows and do not go out of the house. Or we anticipate air turbulence on an upcoming flight and stop going on a flight. Sometimes it is a general state of fear we carry with us wherever we go. So the term fear is used to describe feelings that happen when the source of harm, the threat, is either immediate or imminent, and anxiety be used to describe feelings that occur when the source of harm is uncertain or is distal in space or time, and it overwhelms us and paralyzes us. So the real question here is not whether or not we all have fear and anxiety, because we all deal with it at some point in our lives. But why it gets severe enough to be diagnosed as a disorder, and what can we do about it? How much fear and anxiety is actually safe? Here we are going to look at what is anxiety disorder, and what are the different phases of anxiety disorders, and what are the causes of anxiety disorder, and how can we face this disorder courageously. What is anxiety disorder? The neuroscientist and author Joseph Ledoux has called anxiety the price we pay for an ability to imagine the future. He said, anxiety is an imagination of a future that hasn't happened yet, but that you are concerned with, worried about, and dreading about. It is a chronic or long-term fear that exhausts us mentally and emotionally. It clouds our judgment and eventually makes us feel insecure and powerless, and sometimes makes it difficult to concentrate and leads to irritability. A consuming wave of fear and dread, which is also called panic attacks, are a common symptom of anxiety disorders. Somatic or physiological symptoms like increased heart rate, sweating, trembling, chest pain, fear of losing control, and gastrointestinal changes are also common in this state. A panic attack may happen just once or multiple times in a person's life. Anxiety is considered as a disorder if such symptoms persist over a period of 6 or more months. Physiologically, even a little bit of fear that stays for a long time or continuously can become toxic and cause great strain on your body that can lead to severe health challenges such as high blood pressure, chronic pain, obesity, heart disease, diabetes, some autoimmune diseases, and even cancer. These stress-related illnesses are the most common causes of death in our society. There are many phases of anxiety disorders. This means anxiety disorders can be manifested in different forms. The primary anxiety disorders are separation anxiety, showing excessive fear and anxiety when separated from home or an individual they are attached to. The second one is selective mutism, which manifests as an inability to speak in certain places. And the third one is social anxiety disorder, which has symptoms include being extremely anxious and afraid of social situations. Some others are specific phobia, panic disorder, agoraphobia, and generalized anxiety disorder. So the generalized anxiety disorder is excessive worry or fear about anything and everything, even when there is nothing to provoke it. People with this disorder have extreme difficulty in functioning everyday life. If you or someone you know are currently experiencing any of these symptoms or can relate with these, I would encourage you or your loved one to consult with a doctor, a professional counselor, or a psychologist for help. I also want to encourage you, if you or your loved one suffer any of these symptoms or disorders, you are not alone. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the United States. Approximately 40 million people, that is 18% of the population, are affected by it. In India, recent studies showed that about 45 million people struggle with anxiety disorders. Researchers have also found that anxiety disorder is one of the most common disorders among the people of India. What causes these debilitating human conditions? Like all mental illnesses, anxiety disorders result from a dynamic and complex interaction of biological, psychological, social and environmental, and spiritual factors. Number one, the biological factors. What could those factors? Some studies have confirmed that in some cases it can be hereditary. A person is at 3 to 5 times greater risk of developing anxiety disorders if such a condition is found in immediate family members like parents. Other internal factors like certain personality traits also make a person more vulnerable to developing anxiety disorders. Several studies have also suggested that an imbalance in the neurons or chemicals in our brain play a role in the development of anxiety disorders. I also want to add briefly that anxiety disorders result from a neurobiological dysfunction. The new brain imaging techniques have found abnormalities in specific brain areas in people with anxiety disorders. These structures are a part of our brain system that activates the body's automatic response to a threatening situation when we fight the threat or flee from the threat to preserve our bodies and minds from danger. This often results in physiological reactions like sweating and heart pounding. As I had mentioned earlier, fear is supposed to function as an inner alarm signal that warns us of an imminent danger. But if you have been dealing with fear and anxiety for a long time, this warning system in our brain becomes too sensitive and is often set off by even the smallest detail or incident, or even in the absence of an event or cue that triggers any fear. The second one is the psychological factors. They can even go back to our childhood. Low self-esteem, fear of being abandoned when you were a child, or rejected by family members or friends, feelings of intense loneliness and helplessness, and early onset of depression can increase a person's risk of developing an anxiety disorder. In addition, early life events like childhood trauma, for instance, being physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as a child, a negative family event like death of a parent or sibling, and academic failure can be risk factors. The social and environmental factors can include major life stressors like physical illness, death of a loved one, a move to a new home or a place, job loss, relationship problems, financial problems, or even the birth of a child. Anxiety primarily originates from a feeling of fear of abandonment. If you have faced some form of loss already in life, you might be worried about losing the person or that thing again. What could be some spiritual factors that can influence anxiety? Our understanding about God matters greatly. We believe and teach others that God is so big that He designed the entire world we live in. We believe and teach that God is so big that He orchestrates the functioning of the planets and stars that human beings have yet to explore. But often we forget that God is so big that He cares about even the seemingly ordinary details of our lives. All of these biological and neurological, psychological and social factors are intertwined with the spiritual factors, causing further stress and unhealthy or toxic fear and anxiety. So in a person with anxiety disorders, or what we call an experience beyond the normal level of worry, fear, and anxiety, there is an inability to assess the threat related to everyday situation. When this system is not functioning well, they anxiously respond to situations that don't pose threat, which sometimes becomes harmful to not only themselves but also others. I would like to bring an example from the Bible to explain this further. In 1 Samuel chapter 26, David spared the life of the homicidal king Saul in a dramatic way. But in chapter 27, we see David acting out of his character. We see that he took up an alliance with the Philistines. He went on a rampage with every surrounding village. I've always wondered what happened to David that day. I believe two verses that helps us understand David's uncharacteristic actions. In verse 1, he thought, "One of these days I will be destroyed by the hand of Saul." Then verse 11, we read that David did not leave a man or woman alive to be brought to Gath, for he thought they might inform on us and say, "This is what David did." David was certainly engaging in cognitive distortions, such as mind reading and overgeneralizing. We know that David's life was on the run for a long time, and it has obviously taken its toll on David's emotional, physical, and spiritual health. The chronic state of fear, frustration, and exhaustion apparently caused David to feel hopeless and even driven him to the point of paranoia. David had become convinced that he would be destroyed one day. His healthy fear of the enemy that was in Saul grew to be an unhealthy fear and anxiety that led to the massive killings of innocent people. We may have a difficult time relating to David's exact dilemma and outrageous responses, like killing people to his own fear and anxiety-provoking situations. But we can certainly relate to his feelings and some responses. We can project our inner turmoil onto others and even engage in killing others with our thoughts and words. Being in a constant state of fear and threat by an external source can impact our brain health and mental health functioning and relational functioning, and in turn impacts our spiritual health. There is good news. Anxiety is not a disorder that is hidden somewhere in the mind. It is a problem that happens in our bodies, in our physical brain, and manifests in our bodies. That is why when we are anxious in our minds, we experience changes in our bodies like palpitations and heart pounding. It is not an abstract issue. It is a disorder that can happen due to changes in the brain, mind, environment, and spiritual functioning. Now, how can we face our anxiety courageously? There are many ways we can face our anxiety. Because it is influenced by biological, psychological, social, and environmental and spiritual factors, removing one factor will not eliminate anxiety completely. We must look at the root causes of the anxiety and address them. First, we must ensure that anxiety is not due to a medical condition. Sometimes anxiety symptoms can be the first indicators of a physical illness. Some conditions that can be linked to anxiety is heart disease, diabetes, thyroid problems, and asthma. So if you have any of the symptoms I shared here, please consult with your physician to verify whether it is anxiety disorder or it is anxiety due to a medical condition. Second, take a holistic perspective to your care. This might include seeing a professional counselor or a therapist who can teach you some skills and techniques from a clinical perspective. If the counselor or therapist is a Christian and provide counseling from a Christian perspective, the techniques they will teach you would be seasoned with God's Word. Facing your anxiety courageously might also include consulting with your physician or a psychiatrist to help control the anxiety symptoms by balancing the levels of neurons or chemical interaction in our brain. Research shows that therapy and medication gives us the best possible outcome. Medication can help with bringing that anxiety level down enough that we will get the physical ability to take action. When medicine is used responsibly, it can make a huge impact on the one who suffer with anxiety and the one who cares for them. Medication is not sufficient, but it can be a prerequisite for healing and change with the problem of anxiety. I would like to share with you some lifestyle changes from a Christian perspective that you can begin doing to face your anxiety courageously. Number 1, develop healthy relationships. Like clinicians often put it, it takes people to make people sick, and it takes people to make people well. Healthy relationships are foundational for our well-being. In the animal world, the fight the enemy or flee from the enemy is for survival. Of course, for human beings, it is also for survival. But for us, this response is much deeper than survival. We feel fear because we are afraid of losing that which we love. We are created to love and be loved and to know and be known by those we love. The family and church are called to be compassionate people, which means to suffer with others. One of the many reasons why the COVID pandemic has caused much stress, anxiety, and depression in our lives is the lack of social connection we have experienced. Dr. Kurt Thompson says it so profoundly. The pandemic has not caused anxiety, but it has revealed who we are without the people and social connections in our lives. The biological family or the church or spiritual family can help a member to face anxiety courageously in different ways. Number 1, provide validation. Your loved one's anxiety may not make sense to you, but you can validate their experience by allowing them to safely share their feelings and thoughts. Pray with your loved ones from a place of humility and genuine concern. Keep aside any forms of judgment and condemnation. Anxiety disorder doesn't mean that they have less faith or weak faith. Anxiety is no respecter of persons. It cuts across all socioeconomic classes, so fame and fortune and money make no difference. You do not need to advise because it wouldn't work in the midst of an anxiety episode. Being present and assuring them of your help and support is the key. Overthinking that comes with anxiety can make someone more anxious. It becomes a vicious cycle. Repressing anxious thoughts won't work because they will pop up again and sometimes with more intensity. Some other techniques you can use to stop overthinking is plan your days out. If you have a lot of free time to think and ruminate over things, we tend to fill that space with worrying about what is uncertain. Fill your days with doing things, whether it is working inside home or outside home, or meeting with people, or doing chores, and so on. Try to see anxious thoughts as guesses, not facts. They're not truths about you or the situation. Practice observing those thoughts, then reacting to those thoughts. Then ask questions to yourself regarding the thoughts based on what Apostle Paul taught the church in Philippi. Are these thoughts true? Are these thoughts honorable? Are these right and admirable? Are these pure and lovely? Are these thoughts merciful and kind about me or others? Are these thoughts worthy of praise? If they are not worth thinking about. Another technique is exercise. Research shows that aerobic exercise is especially helpful. Simple walking for 30 minutes or jogging, bike riding, swimming, exercising on an elliptical all help reduce anxiety. It helps increase the level of neurotransmitters or chemicals in your brain, which directly increases a sense of well-being. The last on the list, but must be at the center of your life and any coping strategy you take, are these 3 activities: worship, prayer, and scripture meditation. The single most commonly uttered command in the entire Bible is, do not be afraid. Over and over again. The reason I believe it is there, because God knows who we are. We are people who can be easily afraid and frightened. He is our creator. He knows our frame. But we never see God either in the Old Testament or in the New Testament saying, shut up, why are you so afraid? We never see God rebuking or yelling at people for being afraid. We never see him getting angry for people getting afraid. But we always see his gentle assurance. Don't be afraid. But he also adds something powerful to it. And that is his presence, his nearness. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. He doesn't say, do not be afraid because all the circumstances are going to be exactly the way you want them to be. But he says, do not be afraid because I am with you. When you wake up in the morning, set apart some time to practice the nearness of God, dwelling on the promise of his presence. Take deep breaths as you meditate on how God breathed his spirit and his life onto you. As you take controlled breathing, you're also physically regulating your emotions of fear and anxiety. The more you set your mind on God, the more you're able to control your wandering thoughts. The more you focus on him and his presence with you, your mind would be able to activate the parasympathetic system in your brain that helps you to rest and relax. Now, you're not resting and relaxing on a false idea or hope, but you are resting and relaxing in the presence of the one who created that brain, who is able to rewire that brain, the one who has promised to you, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Your hope in God holds you and anchors you to God, who cannot be shaken by the wind and the waves of life. He cares about what you're doing and thinking. He wants to comfort you in times of your despair, work, study, or family pressure and problems. He wants to uplift your spirit and guide you through the toughest decisions you need to make in life. Accept every reason that causes worry, fear, and paralyzing anxiety in your life and give them to God. Because it shows that you are a human being living a life and not a programmed robotic machine. Even if we lose that which we love the most, the God of hope, as Apostle Paul describes him, is at work raising the dead to life. May God protect you, sustain you, heal you, and give you peace.